Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into the 2024 Bertelsmann Annual Report today.
That's right.
Think of this as your backstage pass to understanding the performance and strategic direction of this, global media services and education powerhouse.
Exactly. And look, this report is packed with information. Our mission really is to distill the most important and, well, intriguing insights for you.
Okay.
We'll navigate the financial highlights, the big strategic moves, and their views on things like sustainability and, what's next.
Okay, let's get right to it then, the big picture. How did they actually do financially in 2024? The report shows group revenues of, 19.0 billion, which is down 5.9% year on year. What's the story behind that dip?
Well, the main reason for that revenue decline was the sale of their stake in Majorel. That happened back in November 2023.
Ah, right, Majorel.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that Bertelsmann themselves, they sort of adjusted their forecast during the year. So this result, it actually lines up pretty well with their revised expectation, which was for a moderate decrease.
Got it. So a strategic divestment with a financial impact makes sense. But it sounds like the underlying businesses showed some strength. I'm looking at the organic growth figure here.
You're right, spot on. If you strip out the effects of acquisitions and divestitures, their organic growth actually rose to a pretty healthy 3.3%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a significant jump from the 0.8% they had the year before. So, while the overall top line is down, the core businesses are actually performing quite a bit better. It's like seeing the engine's performance even after taking a part out.
That makes sense, yeah. And what about profitability? Operating EBITDA adjusted? It seems like it held up pretty well.
It did remarkably well. It came in at 3,111 million. That's only a very slight dip, like 0.2%. And what's really fascinating here is they actually exceeded their initial earnings expectations for the year. So, they ended up being more profitable than they first thought.
Always a good surprise.
Yeah.
Now, the report also mentions their leverage factor in economic debt. Can you maybe shed some light on what those mean in this context?
Sure. So the leverage factor, it's basically a measure of how much debt a company has compared to its earnings. For Bertelsmann, it stood at 2.0 at the end of 2024. That's up a bit from 1.8 in 2023.
Okay, an increase.
Yeah, but, and this is key, it's still below their own maximum target of 2.5.
Right.
Their economic debt, that includes things like net financial debt, lease obligations, stuff like that, that increased to 5,445 million. So look, a slight increase in leverage isn't necessarily alarming on its own, but it does mean they've taken on a bit more debt relative to earnings. For our listeners, it's just something to, keep an eye on in future reports, see if that financial risk profile changes, especially with all their investments and shifts.
Got it. Something to watch. Okay, the report also mentions special items totaled a negative 277 million. What kind of things fall into that bucket?
Yeah, those are usually like one-off or unusual items that can skew the main financial result. For Bertelsmann in 2024, this included things like impairments on certain investments.
Okay.
Maybe an investment didn't pan out as expected. Also, expenses from internal reorganizations and adjustments to the value of assets they were planning to sell, stuff like that.
That helps paint a clearer picture of the overall financial health.
Okay,
let's dive into the divisions. How did the different parts of Bertelsmann perform? Starting with, say, RTL Group and their big bet on streaming.
absolutely. RTL Group is seeing some real traction in the streaming world. The number of paying subscribers to their platforms, RTL Plus in Germany and Hungary, M6 Plus in France, Videoland in the Netherlands, it jumped significantly, up 20.6%.
Wow, that's huge growth.
It is, reaching 8.38 million subscribers. And that growth, it's translating directly to revenue. Streaming revenues climbed by a really robust 36.2% to 546 million.
So that strategy is paying off.
It seems to be. I mean, this surge really highlights a critical shift in how people consume media, doesn't it? For listeners, it really underscores how traditional broadcasters are trying to adapt, compete with the streaming giants and the trade-offs they face balancing these different business models.
Right. And it sounds like they're putting a lot of effort into keeping that momentum going. Content, rights acquisitions.
Exactly. They specifically highlighted broadcasting the UEFA Euro 2024 matches that definitely drew a big audience.
Yeah.
And looking ahead, getting the Bundesliga rights from the 2025-26 season, that's a major strategic play. Plus, securing an exclusive 5-year deal with Stefan Raab, the German TV personality.
Oh, yeah.
and renewing licenses for their French channels. It's all about strengthening that content pipeline. And despite these big investments, their operating EBITDA adjusted actually remained pretty stable, 1,158 million.
Okay, interesting. Let's switch gears then. From screens to pages, Penguin Random House. The report called it a record-breaking year. What fueled that success in, the book world?
Yeah, quite the year for them. Several things came together for Penguin Random House. Revenues were up a healthy 8.5%, hitting 4.9 billion.
Wow.
This was driven by, well, a mix of things. Higher average selling prices, a really broad, popular range of titles, and the continued growth of audiobooks. That's a big one.
Audiobooks keep growing, yeah.
Definitely. And their operating EBITDA adjusted also saw a really significant jump, up 11.3% to 739 million. But, even with a record year, the publishing industry itself is facing massive transformations, right? Digital reading, changing tastes.
True.
So Penguin Random House's focus on endorse titles and these strategic acquisitions like Hay House, it's likely a key part of their strategy to, well, navigate those changes.
And it seems they're not just relying on past hits. They've been actively expanding their reach through acquisitions.
Absolutely. They upped their stake in source books, bought publishers like Hay House. They're big in wellness and self-help.
Ah.
They specifically mentioned strong performance in the U.S. market, called out some big bestsellers. Funny story, First Lie wins, The Perennial Atomic Habits.
This is going strong.
Oh, yeah. And get this, even Taylor Swift, a little golden book biography, got a mention.
Really?
Yep, shows quite the range, doesn't it? Tapping into all sorts of different market segments.
Definitely. Okay, from books to music, let's talk BMG. Their BMG Next strategy sounds like it involves some serious investment.
That's right. As part of this BMG Next thing, they poured around €500 million into acquiring music catalogs and signing new artists and songwriters.
$500 million. Wow.
Yeah. The thinking here is clearly about building a strong, diverse portfolio for the future. They're also streamlining operations, focusing on both music publishing and recording.
And it sounds like they're really kind of embracing new ways of doing things, technology, AI.
Definitely. BMG is optimizing how they reach the market. Direct licensing deals with the big players like Spotify, Apple Music. They've also got a physical distribution partnership now with Universal Music Group. And interestingly, they mentioned seeing positive initial results from using generative AI in marketing.
AI and music marketing, how does that work?
Well, the report didn't detail exactly how, but it's not just about efficiency, right? It signals a potential shift, maybe even disruption in how music is created and marketed. For listeners, this could mean, I don't know, more personalized music experiences, but it also raises those questions about, artistic authenticity, copyright in an AI world.
Yeah, big questions.
For sure. They even launched a new copyright platform and invested in AI tools, so they're serious about it. And it seems to be working financially. Operating EBITDA adjusted saw a substantial jump to 265 million from 194 million.
Nice jump.
Yeah. And they highlighted signings like Blake Shelton, Mustard, and a partnership with Tomorrowland Music. So reaching across different genres and audiences.
Okay. Now, Arvato Group, their path looked a bit different. A decrease in operating EBITDA adjusted. What was going on there?
Yeah, Arvato Group kept expanding its global services, new logistics center in the Netherlands, more automation. Their financial services arm, Riverty, partnered with Molly. Arvato Systems worked with Delos Cloud, so lots happening. But a really significant factor hitting their financials was their complete exit from the gravure printing business. They closed the Prenova site in Arnsberg.
Ah, okay. A strategic exit.
Exactly. And that decision likely played a big role in the operating EBITDA adjusted, dropping to 641 million from 895 million. So yeah, growing in some areas, but also making these strategic cuts that, well, impact the numbers in the short term.
Right, some restructuring. What about the Bertelsmann Education Group? They seem to be on a pretty clear expansion path.
Yes, definitely. The education group is absolutely in growth mode. They increased their stake in Afia in Brazil, saw strong performance from Relias in the U.S. and Germany.
Relias is doing well then.
Seems so. Relias also bought FeedTrail Healthcare XM, expanding its offerings. Alliant International University opened a new campus in Phoenix. Afia acquired Unidom Participações SA.
A lot of activity.
Yeah, and it shows in the financials. Both revenues and operating EBITDA, adjusted for the education group, were up. It really highlights their commitment to this sector and, its future growth potential.
Okay. And finally, Bertelsmann Investments, their venture capital arm. How did their investments fare in 2024?
Bertelsmann Investments, or BI, was pretty active, made 34 new investments, provided follow-on funding to 24 existing ones, ended the year with, what, 379 investments in their portfolio?
Busy year.
Very. Their revenues grew to 563 million, and a big chunk of that was driven by the success of Applike, their mobile ad tech company.
Oh, app like.
Yeah. And their operating EBITDA adjusted showed a really significant improvement, hitting 75 million. Since they started back in 2006, BI has put in about 1.9 billion and generated returns of roughly 1.4 billion. So it shows the sort of long-term value creation they're aiming for.
Okay, so looking across the board, quite a diverse performance, wouldn't you say? Clear strategic shifts towards digital international growth.
Absolutely. But beyond the pure numbers, Bertelsmann also really emphasizes the importance of, well, intangible resources, things like human and intellectual capital. Why are these aspects so central to how they think?
That's a good question.
Well, they explicitly state in the report that they see human, relationship, and intellectual capital as fundamental, like essential for creating value and ensuring their long-term sustainability. They get that success isn't just about financial assets or buildings, it's also about their people, the relationships they build, the knowledge they hold.
Right, the soft stuff. That's
Yes.
actually really hard stuff. And what specific areas are they focusing on when it comes to these intangible assets?
So, for human capital, their priorities include things like fair working conditions, promoting diversity and inclusion, supporting employee health and well-being, and fostering continuous learning. They mentioned Bertelsmann University and their vocational school.
Right.
They also place a really strong emphasis on corporate culture, guided by principles like to empower, to create, to inspire, and core values. Creativity, entrepreneurship. They even track employee sentiment with these indexes, Entrepreneurship Index, Empowerment Index, and they revised their leadership principles in 2024, so it shows an ongoing commitment.
Interesting to see that internal focus measured like that. What about their commitment to the environment and, broader sustainability?
Yeah.
The report mentions their early adoption of CSRD.
Yes, that's significant. Bertelsmann is taking sustainability reporting seriously. They're among the early adopters of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD.
Okay, CSRD.
Mm-hmm.
Remind us what that means practically.
So CSRD is basically a new set of EU rules for how companies report on sustainability. The key difference is it requires much more detailed and standardized information about their environmental and social impact, their governance, the whole ESG picture.
More transparency then.
Exactly. And in 2024, they did their first climate risk analysis. They've set a Bertelsmann 2030 climate target focused on cutting greenhouse gas emissions, Scope 1, 2, and the relevant Scope 3 emissions across their value chain.
And what concrete steps are they taking to actually hit those targets?
Their actions include, well, the expected things, boosting energy efficiency using more renewable energy, but also optimizing products and services with sustainability in mind. For example, aiming for more certifications in sustainable media production like Green Motion or EcoProd.
Right.
They also reported that 89% of the paper they use comes from sustainable sources, mostly certified virgin fiber, some recycled. And they're actively doing EU taxonomy reporting now, detailing which business activities count as environmentally sustainable under the EU rules. It's definitely a move towards greater accountability.
It is impressive to see that level of detail. Of course, with a global operation this size, there are always risks and also opportunities on the horizon. What did Bertelsmann flag in these areas?
Well, economically, they see continued moderate global growth in 2025, but they definitely point to potential, let's say, headwinds from geopolitical uncertainties and trade tensions, the usual suspects.
Sure.
Specific risks vary by division. Like Bertelsmann Marketing Services worries about digital substitution. Bertelsmann Investments faces volatility in portfolio valuations. Financial risks like interest rates, currency fluctuations, those are managed centrally with hedging.
Okay.
There are also legal risks mentioned, like ongoing lawsuits involving RTL Group and Fun Radio. But on the flip side, the opportunity side, they see potential benefits from changes in the legal or regulatory environment and maybe favorable shifts in financial markets.
Looking specifically at the near future then, what's Bertelsmann's actual outlook for the rest of 2025?
Their overall expectation is for that continued moderate growth in the global economy through 2025. They think monetary policy will gradually become more neutral and private consumption might improve as inflation keeps falling.
Sounds cautiously optimistic.
Kind of. Importantly, they don't expect any major deviations in how their individual key business units perform compared to the overall group, and they expect their liquidity, their financial resources, to remain sufficient.
Good to know. Finally, let's just quickly touch on how a company this complex is actually governed. Any key aspects of Bertelsmann's corporate governance structure stand out?
Yeah, it's structured as a partnership limited by shares, a KGaA, with Bertelsmann Management SE as the general partner. This creates a kind of dual leadership structure. They have separate supervisory boards overseeing management focused on continuity and sustainable management.
Hmm.
And there's a strong emphasis on compliance formalized in their Bertelsmann Code of Conduct, Supplier Code of Conduct. Plus, they have established whistleblower protection systems in place, trying to encourage ethical behavior and transparency.
Right. So to kind of wrap up our deep dive into the 2024 Bertelsmann annual report, it really seems clear the company navigated a pretty complex economic landscape. They strategically sold off a major asset, yes, but still managed to improve the underlying performance of their core businesses.
That seems fair, yeah.
Their focus on digital growth, especially streaming and education, is really evident. And so is this increasing emphasis on sustainability and, well, robust corporate governance.
Exactly. And for you, our learner, maybe some particularly interesting takeaways are that impressive growth at Penguin Random House, the dynamic expansion of RTL streaming, BMG's innovative use of AI in music,
Right.
and Bertelsmann's proactive stance on sustainability reporting with CSRD. Plus, that focus on the human element, the corporate culture, it gives a valuable peek into their values and maybe their long-term vision.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final thought for you listeners to chew on. Given Bertelsmann's really diverse portfolio, media, services, education, and this clear strategic focus on digital transformation in international markets, what do you think will be the most significant challenges and maybe opportunities they'll face in ensuring continued success in this, well, rapidly evolving global landscape we're in?
That's a good question to leave people with.
It's definitely something worth pondering as we watch how all these trends keep unfolding. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.